this.
No, I don't.
If you need me to come up, give me the link. I'll come up.
How do I go live? How do I go live?
You're live now.
I am live. Can everyone hear me? Hello. How's the sound? Are we live?
Yes.
Really? That makes me excited. How's everyone doing? Thank you for all being here, especially all of my Aussie peeps and UK. I know it's a big change, big time change, especially Aussie, but I appreciate everyone being here. You guys are fantastic. So let me just figure out now. I don't want to mess anything up, so hang on. Let's see here. I've got a massive presentation, but I don't want to mess up what I'm going to share screen-wise. So let's just see here. Hang on one second. We seem to be frozen. I don't know where. Can you hear me? I muted it. I don't know how to get to my slides.
Okay, so you're already sharing screen.
Right,
so
but
just click that screen.
Click on this?
Down here.
Huh?
Yeah, click on that.
Where at
Click on
though?
this.
Should I make it bigger?
Click on this.
Where?
You're not muted.
Oh, okay.
Click on this screen.
How about now?
Yes. Click on this.
Where?
Right here, where it says curious for a second, and then you should share screen and share audio when you're good.
Wait, go back.
Yeah. Do you need help?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, because my mouse keeps freezing.
Okay, so you're gonna share a screen and then go to your slides.
Which one though?
Right there. Hi everyone.
Hi everyone. I'll be right there. I swear.
That second screen right there. You're gonna click on it and
yes.
Share audio right there.
And
there.
Go right back. Let me. Where?
Now hit the remove on that one. I think you're confusing yourself. Hit remove.
Which one?
That second screen.
Go back to your. Get rid of that one.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. Oh, I see. I gotcha. Ooh. Now I can make myself bigger, right?
Yes.
Nice.
Click on that. Hit remove, and then there you go. And then when you share your screen, and you do what we went through.
Okay, hang on. I think we've got it.
Got it, see?
Fantastic. I was ready to hit the pavement. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for that little bit of technical difficulty, but I think we've got it now. StreamYard will not be the end of me. I feel like it was pretty much going to take over, but I think we're good. So once again, like I said, thank you all so much for coming, especially, as I said, everyone with the time difference. I do apologize. I tried to make it at what I thought would be a good time for everyone, but I guess there really is no good time when some people are 18 hours ahead, 24. So I do apologize, but it will be a good live. Tonight we're going to be talking, as everyone knows, about Michael Hutchence, my favorite of all, and the tumultuous life he had pretty much from the point of being born on. He came from a broken home. He had lived in Hong Kong for many years, returned back to Sydney, Australia, and that's kind of when he began his career in music. So, and that's kind of when he began his career in music. So, sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant to mute it. And his career in music. So, sorry again. Okay, so here we are. So tonight's live was going to be more than I thought it would be. As I did my slides, when Michael gets to the point of his life where he meets Polly Yates, which is, for all intents and purposes, when they get together, the end of 1994. And by 1997, he's dead. So between 1995 and 1997, Michael goes through some pretty rough times and custody battles with Bob Geldof, because Paul at the time was married to Bob Geldof. So Michael's life took a pretty rough turn when he did meet her, but she's gone too. Paula passed in 2000. Michael passed in 97. So they both are no longer with us. So I am not here to bash anyone that Michael was involved with. They did have a little baby girl together. She's now 25, Heavenly Hirani, Tiger Lily. She is in Perth, Australia, and she is a musician, but she lives a very bohemic lifestyle. You don't see much of her, and pretty much Michael had nothing left when he did die, as he thought he was going to be worth, I want to say, 20 million. Tiger Lily did not end up with any money, and she ended up being adopted by Bob Geldof. So she did not even grow up in with the Hutchence family. No relations, no ties to any of them. Michael's sister Tina, who lives in LA, attempted several times to reach out to Tiger Lily, but nothing ever happened. Michael's parents have both since passed away. He does have a brother, Rhett, who is in Australia, but like I said, Tiger Lily does not have any contact with them. She does live with her boyfriend, and they just kind of travel and play their music. So the hard part about this series is that we're going to be talking about some pretty rough areas. Michael hid a secret that no one knew of until years after his death. In 1992, he would be in Copenhagen with his girlfriend at the time, Helena Christensen. And, well, things took a turn. A cab driver supposedly told him to get off the road. And according to what Helena says, the cab driver just got out of his car, went over to Michael, punched him in the face, knocking Michael to the ground, and hitting his head off of the cement sidewalk, which understandably changed Michael's world forever. So when you suffer a TBI, which is a traumatic brain injury, it puts you at a higher risk for everything else. Depression, addiction, and worst case scenario, suicide. Because what TBIs do is they affect your overall entire personality. The extremely sad part about Michael's injury was that he lost his sense of smell and taste. So when I think of that, I can't imagine, that to not have any pleasure with having a glass of wine, smelling flowers, which in Michael's case was devastating. He was extremely hedonistic, very sexual, very sensual. That alone rocked his world. So his overall personality became very dark. He became aggressive. He became a risk taker. His band was seeing things happen from that 92 on. They didn't know why. They couldn't understand what happened to him. When they were in Capri recording an album, it's not, I'm not laughing, but there is an interview where Gary Beers, who was part of INXS, does say that during that time when we were all on the island of Capri, pretty much stuck together, every single one of us was either threatened or, Michael attempted to fight, which is very sad, but it goes to show you that it just has this brain injury has such a devastating effect on everything. You're left with pretty much, and Michael did say this at one point too, Helena, you are left without feeling any type of self-being, self-worth. You feel isolated, and it took like a turn for the very worst. So he, his overall personality was no longer the happy-go-lucky, lovable man that she knew. Fast forward, let's just talk about what I said with TBIs, with addiction, what it brings on. When Michael was dead and his toxicology was done, the amount of drugs in his system were quite overwhelming. He was being treated for depression, so he was on Prozac, taking more than he should have, missing it at times. So the combination of that, he had cocaine in his system, Valium, codeine. He was on Keflex for a burn, which he had, I guess maybe fell asleep and had a cigarette in his hands, and he had burned his finger so bad that the burn went to his bone, just to the point right before his bone. So he was chronically on Keflex, which is as an RN, that's a very strong antibiotic. So that can take its toll on your system as well. Plus his blood alcohol level was 0.1. Now he was in Australia at the time, so that's double the limit for what they would consider, if you're driving, to be a problem. And he had been drinking plenty of gin and tonics. He had been out to dinner with his father earlier in the evening and had gone, back, and his dad said he seemed okay. He was worried. He was nervous. Paula was back in London with their daughter and her 3 daughters that she had with Bob Geldof, ensued in a rough custody battle. So he was very worried about that evening. So when he did get to Australia in November, he was just 37 years old at the time. He checked in under the name Mr. Murray River, which I had never heard that before. And we'll see later that he did end up hanging himself. But let's go back now. So let's talk about Michael before the TBI. And then you talk about him in interviews, which is, when I read them, I don't know, it leaves me with so many questions. But when it does come to TBI and the combination of everything he had in his system, there is no rhyme or reason to where, at what point you could so quickly snap. But he had been interviewed, and he said he was aware of how lucky he had been in life, but that he could lose it all. He went on to say, I'm not complaining about the life I've got. I'm a dad. I sing. I travel. I get into most of the clubs for free, which he didn't really have to worry about. But I found that humble part of him adorable. I have freedom, and freedom gives you a certain amount of power. So there's kind of a yin and yang to his, I don't know, his thinking. He's a dad. He's kind of makes it seem like no big deal. I'm a dad. I sing, I travel, but then there's power and there's freedom. And I just think his overall way of thinking was gone. His mind was all over the place. He did an interview 2 years before his death. And he tells him, I don't want to be a effing cliche. I don't need to be dropping off in a hotel bath. I've come close, though. I'm surprised I've survived, and so are a lot of my friends. Okay, so that's whatever. That's an interview. I get it. That's just something you might hear a rock star say. But let's fast forward. Keep up with me because we're going to do a little back and forth because I want you to remember with TBI and Michael before it and after it. So let's fast forward. When they went to his room, which would be considered a crime scene, and he was on the floor, the bathtub was filled with water, as if Hutchence had been preparing to have a soak before he hanged himself with a belt. So to me, that is very eerie. I don't know what his plan was. Was he going to take a bath? But his mind snapped, and because of a TBI and your erratic thought process, you make split decisions that could be deadly, but are always to the point of impaired judgment, and your decision making lacks any real, anything that's going to turn out well. So the part with the bathtub being full, and prior to that, him saying how he would never want that to be, that he would be known as a rock star found dead in a bathtub, was, I thought, quite interesting. And also with suicides, just add this on to Michael's predisposition. Someone completing a suicide as opposed to attempting. Women are more prone to attempting suicide. They try to kill themselves, but for whatever reason, they don't succeed, as opposed to when a man is going to commit suicide, they get it done successfully. Okay, so let's talk about the morning he was found. He was found by a hotel maid. Now, she knocked on the door. She wanted to go in to clean it. No one answered, of course. So she unlocks the door, but she couldn't to get in. She really had to push on it, not knowing that he was behind the door. And like I said, suicide is a sensitive subject. So I had put this out that, of trigger warning, it could be graphic, but it is. This is real. And I don't mean to offend anyone, and I don't want anyone to be triggered by it, but I'm at points, this conversation, there's no other way to talk about it but very raw. So she kind of really, really pushed on the door. And when she did that, his belt buckle snapped from the belt itself, causing him to fall to the ground. And that is when she was able to peer into the room, and he was naked and lifeless, which I can't even imagine. So, of course, then that takes on a whole other world of its own. From that point on, it becomes a crime scene, and we will eventually get into that. But before we get any further, I just felt it was important to just put it out there that, especially Michael, he could have called anyone, but unfortunately, when you have a TBI, you don't think about anything that could sound the slightest bit normal and rational. But there are so many great organizations, hotlines. If you go on YouTube, there are a million different sites, from everything from self-harm to grief to depression, addiction. There's a hotline. There is an organization for everything. So anyone, feeling that way, feeling lost, depressed, out of sorts, just not even right, call someone, don't let it progress, because in the end, Michael's secret of the TBI added to his demise, and we have to remember that. And I think it's pretty interesting when we do start to talk about it, their career with INXS, which was so successful. They were amazing. But when you really read his lyrics, they just, I think, take on a whole other life, for who he really was, because he was just so loving and wonderful and kind and compassionate. And like his words, don't change for you, don't change a thing for me, that, which is a beautiful song, but it's just so simple. But yet when you think of at the end of his life, he hated himself. He really, if he could have, done anything to just not be Michael Hutchence, he would have. Words are weapons sharper than knives, make you wonder how the other half die. And there will be times in his life, which will be part of another series. Michael, the whole life of Michael is very complex. So I'm not even sure how many series it will take, because a wonderful documentary was done in 2019 called Mystified by his friend Richard Lowenstein, and it's just fantastic. It just really puts you right there with him. The interviews are right with the source. They're raw. They're beautiful. They're showing you his last rehearsal, which I have videos for all that. But I just feel tonight is just getting to know who Michael was up until the point of meeting Paula, when everything really took a turn for the worse. So he loved. Of course, he did love women, but he just loved people. He loved to have a good time. He loved to have dinners at his home. He had olive trees in his backyard, fruit trees in a villa that he had in Peru, which is absolutely beautiful. So he was a very hands-on, sensual person that to not have that sense of taste or smell, I just feel would be earth-shattering to anyone, let alone someone where it was so heightened and he was so hypersensitive with everything he did in his life. He wasn't known to be a fighter or aggressive, like I said, until after that TBI. Prior to that, and here's his words: try not to hate, recreate, love your mate. Like, it's all very sad, to say the least. But we're going to try to get through it and shed some light on mental awareness being so important, advocating for it, and not being ashamed to say, I do have depression, or yes, I'm a recovering addict, or I need help, I'm an addict. Whatever the case is, I just think the more we talk about it, the better a chance we have at maybe removing some of those negative stigmas. They've been around for a pretty long time, but it takes just maybe one conversation between an intellectual group of people to get things to change. So let's hope for that, if anything. So let's just talk a little bit about his career. We're going to get to Michael and his earlier years, but just for all intents and purposes, INXS started out as the Ferris brothers, who were his friends, Andrew, Tim, and John. They would later then change their name. This picture of them to me looks like the Little Rascals grown up. I love it, but it's quite funny. This was INXS. They changed their name to INXS, and then this picture was taken in 1982, which Michael really, would be on the top row, the second from the left. Barely, he really did change so much. It doesn't look like him at all, but I find that picture quite funny. So here's a little bit more of their lyrics and how, like I said, it shows you where his head was at the time he was writing different things. So you're so fine, lose my mind, and the world seems to disappear. And that's another topic he would bring up a lot. I wish I could just disappear. But then the opposite, the yin and the yang, would be he would be quoted as saying, "I feel invisible." So that's where that TBI comes in, and you lose that sense of self-being. He would, and then he was known to be a bad boy, play things off like he could be reckless and seem like he didn't really care. And these lyrics, again, all you've got is this moment. 21st century's yesterday. You can care all you want. Everybody does. Yeah, that's okay. So he kind of sounds like he's trying to just make light of overall just caring in general. He's a rock star, and yeah, you can care, do whatever. But it really, if there's one thing about Michael, he was the total opposite. He was known as he hated to be alone. He was needy, and that also could come from his childhood and growing up. But for whatever the case is, I just think when we think of his lyrics and we hear his songs from this point on, to me they take on a whole other meaning. And I really read, which is not good to do, but I really read into everything a little bit deeper now that I know his story, and it's all very tragic. But once INXS got into motion, they were known for nonstop creating album after album, tour after tour. That was what they were about. They were extremely hardworking. He was, yes, their front man, but he was known for it's all for one for all. He hated, and it is funny being referred to as the lead singer or their front man, even though in reality that's who he was. And when INXS hit the stage, Michael was the man that could mesmerize 40,000 people. He was the one. So whether he liked it or not, being the front man was what he did the best. So, and he was quite talented. I mean, his voice, he had I would say if anybody came the closest to like a Jim Morrison of our time, it would be Michael Hutchence. He had that way about him when he hit the stage, and he moved like Jim. He at times even looked like him. And in some pictures, as I was researching, I thought they were Jim Morrison, and it ended up that they're Michael. So that was, I thought, kind of interesting. And he did love Morrison. So let's talk about 1985 INXS, Listen Like Thieves. I'm sure everyone on this live has either heard the album or loved at least one of the songs on it. But this would be the album that would get their first top 5 in the States, which was big for them, and it would be What You Need. And I could recall it like it was yesterday, but this started it all. Was What You Need. It won them many awards, Countdown Music and Video Awards. They got Best Video for this song. And they then began to form an alliance with Chris Thomas, who would go on to produce many of their other albums. So it created a very good partnership. Now, Kick might be the one that we all remember the most. This was also fantastic because I mean, Never Tear Us Apart was probably the most fabulous song that my generation could remember. I know I remember the video like it was yesterday, as well as Devil Inside, New Sensation. Like when they were underrated. When we go back, we really look at these songs, you think, wow. When I think of the 80s, it's so much of it is INXS music. Mystified, which is a beautiful song, Need You Tonight. They're all hits in my mind, whether they made it to the Billboard or not. They're fantastic. Then there was INXS Suicide Blonde. Supposedly he wrote about Kylie Minogue. Whether that's true or not, I'm not really sure. That's in interviews, I know she does. She has said that song was written about her, and it would make sense. That was the time him and Kylie were an item, so I wouldn't think she would have any reason to say that otherwise. Welcome to Wherever You Were. That was in 92. Full Moon Dirty Hearts was in 93. And I love this album cover. And I know my mother told me to never get in vans with strangers, but if that van pulled up, and I'm taking a ride. I'm going to be quite honest. I think he looks fantastic in this picture, and I love it. That's one of my favorite albums. So yeah, I'm getting in that van. Elegantly Wasted would be INXS's 10th album, and it would be Michael's final album with the band. He would start a tour for Elegantly Wasted in April of 97, and he would do the entire, it was a 77 show tour, made it through September. Their last show would be in Pennsylvania. I went to their last show, which was incredible. And he would die in November upon returning to Australia. So Elegantly Wasted did not receive the acclamation, I think probably that it should have, but maybe just because it holds, to me, because it was his last tour and his last album, it kind of holds that special place. This album would also be dedicated to the Ferris brothers' mother, Jill, who Michael loved, adored. She died of cancer, and this album they did dedicate to her, which was beautiful. The band had several live albums that they put out. I'm not going to go through all those. There's a ton of them, but I do love INXS The Greatest Hits. This, I think, was a really good one. They put this one out in 94. It became a top success, I know, in Australia, while here in the States, it didn't really receive the attention it needed. And like I said, there's the last show. So the final performance with Michael on vocals was recorded at Stark Lakes Arena, which is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, on September 27th of 97. It was, the CD itself was pressed as The Last Swing on it, but that it was the Elegantly Wasted tour, and I have to say it was if I knew that was Michael Hutchence's last show. I mean, I of course you enjoy a concert. It was fantastic, but when you look back on it now, wow, it was something else. I'm happy to say that I was able to be there. So let's talk a little bit about his family. He adored his father, and I think anyone that watches any interview with his dad's name was Kelland, and he was referred to as Kel. And Michael was a lot like him. He made you feel at ease. He was a very warm and loving man, and when him and Michael did form more of an adult relationship, they were very extremely close. Michael loved it. He adored his father. And I just think this little part of, I'm not going to get into the full story because Kellen has a website of his own, which I will put in the link in the box under this, but it's a beautiful story of his son, and it's quite, I guess it is quite sad when you read it, but this part I just find beautiful. It says, Michael was an adorable baby with a sweet nature and just giggled and smiled and was no trouble at all. And when Michael does an interview with Rosie O'Donnell years later, maybe 1996, when she asked him about his daughter, his reply is how all she does is smile and giggle and never cries and sleeps all night and just the best baby. So it's sweet when you see that what his father said about him is what he would, had said about his own daughters. And I think that's beautiful. And then another part of the story is, thankfully, we have happy memories to warm our hearts and souls. And these are just a few pictures of Michael. Up on the top left, that would be with his sister Tina and little Heavenly, they called her Tiger Lily. And that they're mainly all Tina. Now the lower picture, one is with his dad and one is with his mom. His parents did split, but he remained close to everyone in his family. And then on the right, Brother Rhett with his dad. I think that's a beautiful picture too. So let's talk a little bit about Michael and women, which he had an affinity for. And of course, usually women that were in either, music, supermodels, of course. And then there would be Polly Yates, who was she was very big in England. She was a TV personality, talk show, morning show, The Tube, The Breakfast Club. So she was extremely popular. And at the time before meeting Michael, she was, the people of London adored her. She was charming. She had a Mary Poppins kind of way about her. Seemed, funny, sweet, cute. And then, for whatever reason, she's a different person when she meets Michael. So in 1989, Kylie at the time was in a relationship with an actor. His name was Jason Donovan. And they met Michael at a gig. And he had asked them then to come to a party afterwards. And he was flirting with her, which, knowing Michael, that's not really out of sorts for who he was. But when she was later interviewed by Current Affairs, she said that the chemistry was instant. And when she was approached by him, his first line to her would be, "I don't know what we should do first, have lunch or have sex," which is, good question. I'm not sure which one they did have first, or maybe, both, and who knows. But for whatever reason, Australia was a bit surprised because Kylie at the time was just this sweet, innocent pop princess. And then gets with Michael, and they called her a sexed up diva, which is silly. The way the press can turn things around is quite ridiculous, but that's what they called her, was a sexed up diva after getting with Hutchence. She described their relationship as magical, but she believed that it was probably doomed. I'm just sure it was because it can only go so long when it's in the type of intense way that Michael was, and nonstop traveling and partying and drinking. And she's in Mystified, the documentary, and there's actual footage of her and Michael together when they were together, and it's pretty it's pretty racy, but it's authentic and it's honest. So I think anybody that hasn't seen it yet definitely needs to. It's eye-opening. It's eye-opening as to what the torment he was going through, and I think it's definitely worth watching. She would say, "An insatiable curiosity, all the good things in life and some of them bad." True. And he opened up a whole new world for me. A lot of it was based around pleasure, let's face it. It felt loving yet sad, but was probably doomed. So, once again, like I said, the whole doom thing, I guess, would be because you could only, I think, handle life in the fast lane like that for so long. But we'll see. When he does get with Paula too, we need to take into consideration she had it rough. So when we do get to her, that won't be till series 2, though. I do want to stress that for how cute Kylie was and how beautiful Helena was, his next girlfriend, Paula was beautiful. She was lovely, but she was doomed too. She would find out that who she thought was her father was not her father. So she had a pretty rough, upbringing, let's say, to put it mildly. So we all have, I guess, our own baggage, demons, things that then can make or break us. So for whatever it is, they all had something that attracted him, and they were, they were lovely women. And then people change and life happens. And, I guess him, when he does get with Paula, it it was definitely doomed. But we'll talk about that later. By 1991, Kyla would say that the relationship was dwindling. She was by that, she had her career, he had his, and it was hard to keep up with it. She would say she can't quite remember exactly why the split happened. Was it work? Was it the drugs? I don't know. He was like a broken man. So that was prior to the TBI. So I don't know if that was just part of the darkness of him, which most musicians have that side, combined with his upbringing and his life wasn't the easiest. Yes, he did have loving parents, but they split, and he was taken to California for a few years with his mother, and only him. And the brother and sister stayed with the father. So he felt somewhat guilty leaving, especially his brother, behind and going to California with his mother. But of course, he would come back, and that's when his whole, his life really took off, and he was, became a part of the Ferris brothers and all that. But he had it rough too. So, like I said, we all have our own little things that make us who we are today. And adding a TBI onto something just intensifies it in the worst way, not in a good way, in the worst way usually. Kylie would talk about remembering he was on all fours crying. I don't know what to do. I didn't know what was happening. I just know he was a broken man. I've never seen a man like that before. I left pretty confounded and destroyed and knew that was it. He broke my heart. I have to confess that the hurt stayed for quite a long time, which is very sad. But the part where he's on all fours on the floor crying, I'm not sure what that is about. That's I don't know if he was on something at the time, because she's pretty honest in Mystified with their drug use, and who knows, but that's a kind of a bit of a rough way to see him before you're gonna end the relationship ends. So these are just some pictures I wanted to throw in just to show you who he was without the women. And I do love this. That's him and his dog. I love that picture. On the top is with INXS, and then the bottom is just Michael. And I love him with the sunglasses. I think that's a great picture. So I just wanted to kind of include it. So let's fast forward now to 1991. And he's with Helena Christensen, who is she's absolutely beautiful, Victoria's Secret supermodel. She's from Copenhagen. She's gorgeous. And they became an item. And let's talk about, 1991, sold out Wembley Stadium crowd. So they're playing to a sold out crowd in Wembley in 91. The band were at their commercial peak. They had performed to about 1.2 million people during the past 10 months and sold close to 10 million albums since the 1987 kick turned them into the, like I said, international superstars. Fast forward 1 year. He's lying unconscious in the middle of a Copenhagen street, the victim of a brutal attack that would instantly change his personality and begin a spiral that would end with his death in a Sydney hotel room. So that is the devastation of a traumatic brain injury combined with depression, addiction, and the fact that trying to keep all of those a secret for that many years, in the end, your brain can only handle so much. And with a traumatic brain injury, like I said, there is a point where you can quickly snap and make the worst decision of your life, which in Michael's case, he did. So Singer's injuries meant he lost his sense of smell, but far worse, he developed a very dark and very angry side. And that would be coming from Helena in an interview. when we got to the hospital and he woke up, he was aggressive. So he was pretty much instantly changed. He was from that one punch, waking up from it, he was a different person. Now, mind you, when he did hit the ground, and we'll see when we talk about after Michael's death and with Mystified and all the revelations that are made, the blow to his head was so traumatic and knocking him to the ground that when she ran over to him and he is on the ground, he's bleeding from his ear and his mouth. She thought he was dead. So that's sad. But that's a TBI. And she does, like I said, talk in great detail about it in Mystified. Opening up about her relationship with Heartthrob, she told how at first he was her perfect match, emotionally joyful, sweet, deep. So they were, in her mind, perfect. And anyone that does talk about their relationship does talk about how grounded she was, and she was so good for him. So, it's just when you think about not only a TBI, but prior to that, he was already overindulging in the finer things in life. So it changes you. Those things all change you along with the depression, and you go from being that joyful, sweet person into someone you don't even know. And she would say it was total mental and physical chemistry. But his injuries making him have the loss of smell, and with the dark side making him so aggressive, just it was devastating to the point where he was crying to her that if he was going to have a child someday, he wasn't going to be able to smell his baby. And I think when you think of that, like how heart-wrenching that is, but it's the reality of ending up with permanent brain damage. And not because when he did go for care, because of course at first he was resistant in the hospital and punching and hitting them and thought that he could just go and recover at her home. That can happen, but with the sense of losing the sense of taste and smell and thinking they can come back, and then hearing from the neurologist that no, and if anything, what our research shows is it gets worse. So that just would only create more depression for him, knowing that. And she would go on to say something drastic happened. I was sad, deeply sad, confused, and bewildered. But at the same time, it couldn't have continued that way. Which of course, there's no possible way anyone could ever stay with someone like Michael being the way he was and being the way Helena was. Because Helena was, if anything, other than being, like I said, a top supermodel, and when you look at her, she's got it all, and she's quite humble and grounded. She's hardworking. There is a part where there is an interview at his home in Capri, and she is there, and this is my second series, but I forget his name. I can't quite remember who did the interview, but she was just, he said, the way she answered the door, of course she was absolutely breathtaking, but just very girl next door kind of attitude about her. And her and her supermodel friend, and I can't remember which one at the time, were in the backyard sunbathing topless as he was interviewing Michael. And with the interview, when we do get to it, Michael takes him out for dinner, has him stay with them for the whole weekend, which showed just that side of Michael, which is of someone that could be so charming and hospitable and everything normal, and yet then getting as they were going to go out to eat, I forget what Michael drove at the time, for it was a Jaguar. Of course it was something expensive, but he said Michael was driving like a maniac which I mean I shouldn't laugh over, but this is the trip where also Michael, like I said, threatened at least everybody in the band at least once while they were there recording. So that the trip to Capri was, I'm sure, it's something that we probably could never imagine. There is some video in Mystified that shows some parties that he had at the home. Lenny Kravitz is there, like, just, you know, he was best friend. He became best friends with Bono. So, you know, like, there for all the normalcies that Michael tried to maintain in his life, you can't run from stardom. You can't run from that. The fact that you're not going to just hang out with the guy next door. You're going to hang out with other celebrities, and there is that image you have to uphold to. And that is the part where that is the dark side of fame. And I don't know if that's what gets me intrigued to do, like the live that I did with Rabbit Dog with John Lennon. Now, I love John Lennon and I love his music, but I'm extremely interested in the dark side of it all, the weird parts, like, you know, with John Lennon, like, you know, when he leaves Yoko Ono for 18 months, but they refer to it as the lost weekend. It's the weird dark moments that I am extremely intrigued by. So especially within Michael's case, I think he already had, even, I know, you know, the TBI, the depression, and all that came along with that was a lot of baggage. Paula's daughters and the custody battle with Bob Geldof would be brutal. The British tabloids in general demonized him. Bob was referred to as Saint Bob, and Michael was the sinner. So you had the saint and you had the sinner, which was quite unfortunate. But when we talk about Paula Yates and Michael meeting, and we talk about the fact that she leaves Bob for Michael within a few months, Bob Geldof had every reason to not like Michael. Who wouldn't hate the man that in your mind has ruined your entire world? He's taken your wife away, who by the time she leaves you, she's already pregnant with another man's child. So you are left behind, totally devastated. And when you do see interviews of Bob Geldof, I mean, it sure took its toll on him. And I mean, in every way possible. No one could have ever seen what was yet to come. Not Michael's death being horrifying, but what would follow would even be just more tragic. Within 3 years, Paula Yates would be gone, leaving their daughter, Tiger, at the time 4 years old, an orphan. So you are already devastated. You're not 16 months old. You don't have any memory. I know I don't. So you don't know your father. You're 4 years old. Your mother's gone. Not sure if she remembers her mother at all. I'm not. That I don't know. Tiger Lily does not do many interviews. She did help Mystified producer to get INXS to release 9 or 10 of the songs for him to use in his documentary, but she does not. She stays out of, like I said, she just stays out of the limelight, and she's just a very quiet girl. She's her father's identical twin. When to see pictures of her today, she's beautiful, and she dark long hair. She has the Hutchence qualities from head to toe. She doesn't. I don't think she looks like her mom at all. But you know, Bob Geldof would cause a lot of problems. Well, rightfully so, but I mean, it's horrible. What in the end, it just put Michael over the edge. But he was concerned, looking at what was becoming of Paula and Michael. They were out of control. They were both doing drugs together and just a mess. So he was fighting for custody of their 3 children. And Michael was, extremely concerned and worried about that. So the night of when he does end up passing, it's actually it's in Australia, it would be 5:30 in the morning when he receives a call from Paula to kind of let him know what's happening, and that her and the girls who had planned on going out to be with Michael in Australia before INXS were set to do their Australian tour in celebration of INXS's 20th anniversary. She tells him that she can't come. Bob somehow prolonged the custody hearing date until December 17th, I think she had said. So when she calls him on November 22nd, let's remember that she calls him the morning of November 22nd to say we're not coming. So right off the bat, even though the hearing's not for another month, you can, whatever it was going to be, if Bob did not want the children to go, that did not mean Bob was going to say Tiger Lily could not go to Australia with Paula. But Paula chose to call Michael and say, no, we're not coming, we can't come. Which put him over the edge into an awful place. And when we go through the whole last few hours and the amount of people he's calling, leaving messages on their answering machines, I'm done, I'm effing out of here. He's calling his ex-girlfriend, who was Michelle Bennett, who's in Australia, and that was his first real true love, and asks her to please come over, I can't be alone. And he tells Paula, I'm going to hang up, I'm going to call now Bob, and I'm going to beg him. So what we get from Paula is very minimal about what that last conversation is, other than her saying that she tells him we can't come, and that he tells her, I can't imagine living without ever seeing my daughter again. So to me, that doesn't sound right. If she really only said to him, we just can't come for the holidays, as opposed to him saying to her, I can't imagine never seeing my daughter again, because the rumors were that Michael was leaving Paula Yates, and that Paula's weapon was Tiger Lily. Whether that is true or not, no one will ever really know. No one knows that part for sure but Michael, who's gone. But we'll see interviews with his bandmates and with his close friends and with his brother, his family, where supposedly the conversations were that he was going to leave her. Yet, when you go on to, the INXS has an actual site. You go back and you look from September of 97 on, and it's Martha Troop, their manager, who had put in kind of daily, little daily posts. But, there was rumors they were getting married in January. Then there's, this Martha would have to kind of go on the site to say that's, Michael and Paula didn't get married today, which was at some point in November. Paula was not even in Australia, but the amount of press that these two were getting was just, it was just enormous. It took on a life of its own. So the stress of that alone, I don't think many could handle what he was going through. And then to add on top of that, you're keeping a secret that you have your permanent brain damage. You can't taste, you can't smell. You're using drugs and alcohol. You're being treated for depression, and you're not using Prozac the way it's prescribed. Meaning they think that at times he was taking more than he should have, and on other days he would miss taking it at all, which back in 1990, when he first went on it, which would be in 1995, we know much more about Prozac now, but the risk of suicide is high. that's one of the antidepressants where there is a lot of research showing that it does have that effect. So he was taking that, and then he was drinking that night and doing cocaine and trying to find more cocaine, and he could not find any more drugs. So all of that really leads to talking about the fact that regardless of if he had a brain injury or not, he was still not telling anyone about, you know, how out of control he was with his addiction and how it took on, you know, a life of its own, and it was ruling who he was. And you're so depressed. You're going to see doctors, and you're having to use back doors to get into their offices because you're afraid that the London paparazzi are going to see you and take a picture, and that's going to be then what you're remembered as. Because he felt that if anyone knew that he had a brain injury and he couldn't taste, he couldn't smell, that he'd be seen as less of a man. So I don't know if that's that rock, you know, the musician trait in them, that rock star trait where God forbid anybody sees me other than being what they think I am, what I portray on stage, as opposed to who you really are, which in Michael's case, like I said, he was needy. He hated to be alone. He did go from relationship to relationship to relationship. And in both cases, with Kylie and with Helena, he hadn't really been broken up yet with Kylie and already moved on to kind of Helena. And he broke Helena's heart and left her for Paula. So, you know, you're way out there. You're already doing a lot of reckless living. That takes on baggage that you're then carrying to yet at the end they were always his friends. He did not die with any of his exes not keeping in touch with him, and they were all at the funeral, which is, that in itself is one of the saddest but hauntingly beautiful ceremonies I've ever seen. And when we do get to that, it's quite emotional at the end. It's his bandmates and his brother who carry his casket out of, I believe, St. Andrew's Cathedral, which is in Sydney, and the funeral procession follows them. Paula and their daughter are there in it. His parents, all of his band. I mean, it's just everybody that is ever had any part of his life. Helena Christensen, Michelle Bennett, Kylie Minogue. She's there. Kylie Minogue shows up with Christy Turlington, who is another supermodel. Diana Ross, Tom Jones. It was like just the who's who showed up for this man's mass. It's just breathtaking as his casket is taken away, and Never Tear Us Apart is played throughout the cathedral to the point where when they exit the church, the streets are swamped, absolutely swamped with people who are just there to catch a glimpse of his casket go by in the car. And that is when, like, it's a lot to take into, and to hear Never Tear Us Apart played. I mean, it was loud, but it is just, it couldn't be more perfect that's an odd way to say it, but it was just so fitting that would be the song that Michael would exit this world with. There's also an ashes ceremony that we get to see. I have a beautiful video on that. It would be his father and his brother Rhett had part of his ashes. The ashes were distributed equally. Paula got a portion, his father and brother got a portion, and his mother and sister got a portion. So there were 3 portions that were given. And his father and brother and a group of friends and the bandmates take a boat out to Sydney Harbor, and that's where his ashes are scattered. And it's very that's a hard one to watch. The singing is absolutely beautiful. I can't remember her name, but when we get to it, that's a very emotional little clip that leaves an imprint. I have that in my head. His sister has his actual grave is in LA, which I never knew that. Or when I was in LA, I would have went out to see that a few years ago. But that is where his actual gravesite is. And there is also a memorial, a huge memorial stone that's in, I believe, Sydney, that his father and brother, put together. And that too is lovely. But I'm not sure where his ashes are as far as in Paula's case. I would hope his daughter has them, but who knows? Maybe they were when she passed away. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure if they were buried with her or Bob Geldof was thoughtful enough that he would have put them to the side to give to Tiger Lily. I'm not quite sure about that, but that's something I will definitely look into. But really, this was just kind of the opener. I just wanted to put it out there so that. And I know it's at a hard time, but I figured with having it on a live, there's the replay and people can watch it and we can at least get a discussion going on mental health, because it's not going away. And if anything, I mean, and especially with addictions, the way an addict is treated it's heartbreaking to me for someone to be afraid to say that I'm either in recovery or I need help bad. We're not programmed to just openly, I guess, feel that we can just lay it out there. I wear my heart on my sleeve and I'm pretty open, so I don't have a problem when I'm down or I'm depressed to say I am, but for the most part, mental illness is kept quiet. People don't want you to know if they're bipolar and they have to take lithium every day of their life. It's not the easiest topics. Suicide being the worst topic to have to talk about. But when we get to that part of this live, it's rough. It's horrible. It's horrible what's left behind. What happens to his entire net fortune. It is the perfect storm formed that morning, and what happened from that point on, everything just became worse, to the point where Polly Yates, one of her daughters, would die, I want to say 2014, maybe years later, of the same thing that her mother would die from, which would be a heroin overdose. And they did call Paula's an accidental heroin overdose. That is what the coroner's final report said. And that would be exactly the same thing that would be put on her daughter's coroner's report final revealed as an accidental, with her children dying, with her children in the home when she died, just as Tiger Lily was in the house when her mother died. And it would be a neighbor who called and kept calling and got no answer, and then finally called one time, and little 4-year-old Tiger picks up the phone to say that her mother's in bed sleeping. And that neighbor would come over and have to ask Tiger to unlock the door and let me in, and she would be found dead in her bed. So it's not fun, but I think his story needs to be told. It deserves to be told, because it could really make anyone who in the slightest way of either dealing with depression or addiction or trying to cover up that I have a brain injury, think it's not that bad that I can't tell someone about it, ask someone for help, let somebody know I'm having a rough time trying to stay sober or clean, and getting that help and not feeling so alone. And as he, like Michael, felt in the end, that to that point where that brain injury had taken over and his rational thought decision making was gone. And within 3 or 4 hours after hanging up with Paula and after fighting with Bob Geldof, as we'll see, he runs a bath, takes off his clothes, and he hangs himself. So his mind was going to take a bath, but in that split decision, then instead he hung himself. To me, that is the picture of what the worst case scenario of what the face of a traumatic brain injury looks like. Would be Michael's that scene when they opened that door and what they saw. That is worst case scenario of what a traumatic brain injury looks like and what it does to your thought processing and your impairments. So I hope this helps anybody that's going to maybe watch this 2 weeks from now or a month from now, to just realize that there is help. There's more help than we can even imagine. Like I said, I was overwhelmed by the amount of different support groups there are for just about everything. But at the very slightest, we have to remember, just in our day-to-day, thinking about how we act towards each other, and the fact that something we say maybe doesn't seem that horrible in our minds, but maybe somebody that's going through a lot, it's going to put them over the edge. And if we can be a little bit more empathetic, maybe we can create some type of change, I would hope, in maybe the slightest way. But other than that, if anybody has any questions, I'm sorry. It's my first live having to run my own StreamYard. I haven't even been able to see me grab my phone now and check. Appreciate you all being here so late I don't even know in what time it would be in London. And I've got my goodness, you guys are fantastic. Let me see here. I just don't want to make sure that there isn't anybody asking for a specific hotline or number. Yeah, you're right. That's right, Rabbit. Yeah. Men tend to be more successful with suicide, women not. And yes, he did refuse treatment in the hospital, which is so sad. Yep, that's right, Allison. It was that snap decision. Terrible. Yeah, the video I have, he had rehearsed the day before and was in great mood. When we get to that part and you see the video, it is not the face of someone that looks in the slightest bit even depressed, even though he was. But I mean, he's having a good time. He's joking around. He rides his motorcycle into the studio that day. Like, it's the total, like I said, he is the face of what a worst case scenario traumatic brain injury looks like. When, like I said, you go from happy-go-lucky joking with your bandmates to less than 24 hours later hanging yourself in your hotel room alone. It's pretty tragic. Yeah, creative people. Oh, when I looked at this in a bigger picture, I adore Chris Cornell. He hung himself. Chester Bennington from Linkin Park would sing at Chris's funeral. And a month later, Chester Bennington hung himself. That, to me, blows my mind, like, in a million ways. I still can't figure it out. And when you see that both of them days prior and the videos, nothing looks wrong. Yet they also do interviews where they talk about battling addiction and the day-to-day and trying to find happiness in anything to just make yourself feel alive. So there is something with the mind of someone creative that also has such a dark spot in it, and that's where I'm so, like, I can't get my mind off of that part of it. Yeah, mental health is still so misunderstood. Absolutely, Allison. That's why I think just us, even I wouldn't care if right now there are 2 people in this channel, I don't know how many are, but it's getting people to talk and not feel bad about it. So I'm happy for whoever is here right now. I appreciate, love you guys. You're all always so kind to me with everything and supporting me. It's just I want to make sure that everyone knows how much I appreciate all of you. Yeah, Raven, that's right. Rest in peace, Michael. To be 37 years old and gone is just, and leaving behind a 16-month-old baby. It's devastating. Physical health, yeah, everything is just crazy else. And people forget we all have mental health and sit somewhere on the scale. Yep, that's right, Jenny, you know it. Unwell depending on how our brain, a vital organ, is wired. Yeah, and that's like we said. So that creative mind, that creative brain. What's the trait? I've got to research that, because there's obviously something there. But the part of hanging yourself is someone that hangs themselves. There is such a level of self-loathing to do that. So that these creative men, and once again, men, the Chester Benningtons, the Chris Cornells, the Michael Hutchence, to take it to that level that you hate yourself so much, but quickly, in every case quickly. Chester Bennington had been with his family, went home alone. Boom, he hangs himself. Chris Cornell had been on tour, got on the phone with his wife. He didn't quite sound right, though. She knew something was off. And he had been abusing, taking more Ativan than he should have. And then he hung himself. And like, Michael back in 97, let me run a bath water and take my clothes off and take a bath, to the point where instead of you take a bath, I'm going to kill myself, and you're gone. So that is a whole other series on its own, but it's definitely something that I am intrigued. I want to look into it more and definitely see who else is, just interested in it, and get a discussion going about that. But getting through the Michael Hutchence's life alone, it's taken its toll. I have to tell you, the research, it takes its toll on your own mind. And there's been days where I have to snap out of it, and I have to stop watching all the videos and stop reading all of the articles, because it can quickly, because I do suffer depression, it quickly can put your mind in not the best place. So I think I need, with this series, taking it in small doses is the probably best way for anyone that's going to watch it, or anyone that wants to get involved with me in researching. I think it's the safest way to do it, while also keeping your own mind in check and staying above water and keeping a good frame of mind. So oh yeah, that Callie, that's right, Kate Spade. See, so that's my first. There we go. She hung herself. So she went against the odds of not only how women kill themselves, but that she succeeded. I forgot about Kate doing that. That's correct. And Jenny, if my kidneys or liver or heart are failing medically, sure as hell I'm going to take that medication and follow doctor's orders. Only difference is people would have real care and concern for me. That's right. They're people want, if someone knows that you've got an issue, they're going to ask you, okay, you taking your meds, you seeing your doctor. When you're keeping it a secret from everybody, and the only person that knew about Michael's brain injury at the time was Helena, and then you're not even with her anymore, like you're in your own torment. So that's hard. That to me is another hard pill to swallow, is the fact that he was dealing with so much and trying to keep it up and thinking he was keeping it all under wraps, but in the end it doesn't matter. With a traumatic brain injury, you're not in control anymore. Your injury's taken over, and it's gonna decide where your journey's gonna take you and what path you're gonna take. And unfortunately, Michael got to a place where he couldn't find his way home, and that to me is just it's hard to handle. So, Callie, you don't have a good support system to help. No, don't. Well, you have a support system now, Callie. So there you go. Ha. I've got depression, and I'm sure there's people in chat that feel the same way. That, but no worries. You're here, and I just want to say, first of all, thank you for coming, but thank you for being so open. That's exactly what I hoped for, is if one person would say, me, that's me, and that to me is beautiful, that you even would put yourself out there like that. Thank you. You're not alone, definitely. I'm going to give you now. I'm going to have to get your email, because now you're going to have my cell phone number, because you're going to have to text me, because I'm going to check on you now, because I'm going to be a big pain in the ass. I want to make sure that every day's okay, because I have people that do that for me, and there are times where I'll only text back just to say, yeah, I'm alive, but I don't feel like talking. Like it could be a lot, just the idea of, even like with the YouTube channel. It's a lot if you're not in the mood. My son left this morning for Nebraska. He's going to be gone for 3 months for a summer job. So he left at 5:30 this morning. It hit me hard. And as I was finishing my slides tonight, that depressive side of me, that, that's the demon on my left shoulder was like, oh God, you have to do this live. Wow. But I did it. And I feel right now like so much better. Even though I miss them, I'm not here. I'm not in my bed, in which I would have been then, in my bed, not answering texts and just being upset and worrying, and because that's what I like to do. I worry about the craziest things. That's part of my depression, Callie. I don't know if yours also attaches anxiety to it, but I'm lucky enough to have both. And especially anxiety, loves to be wide awake at 2 a.m. So at 2 a.m., hello, I am up, and usually up all night. So it takes its toll on your overall entire life. Just your day-to-day is not normal. And anybody that thinks that a depressed person is just lazy and doesn't want to do anything has no idea what they're talking about. No idea. So now we're all here, and we're here to support each other. And even after this live is going to be done, whatever number of series, it doesn't matter. We can form our own little group, but we have to look out for each other. I think that's where it starts. Let's just looking out for each other. And if we're in a mood, or if we're on somebody's channel, and if you know what, if you don't have something kind to say, or if you can't say something in a respectful way, and you know that what you're going to put down comes across as quite disrespectful or cruel, really think about it. Don't say it. Just move on, because it hurts. People are, and some are more sensitive than others, but words do hurt. So if we can just try to show each other a little bit of compassion, I think it goes a long way. So I want to thank all of you so much for being here with me tonight. And I'm tired because I've been up since last night. I haven't got to bed yet. So we're going to hopefully, let me just make sure that I'm ending it and I'm not leaving anyone with any open-ended questions. No, okay. To me, it looks good. Wow, you guys, thank you so much. You're all so lovely. A wonderful group. You wondered, Yolanda, I wonder why Michael decided to keep his brain injury secret, never talk about it, and his girlfriend at the time never mentioned it. So that is a part of, in the documentary, Yolanda, he makes her swear. She was sworn to secrecy that she would not tell anyone, and she loved him, of course. No, I'm not going to. I won't tell anyone, and she didn't. She has never told that secret until she was interviewed by Richard Lowenstein for his 2019 documentary. And the reason Michael hid that from the world is because he told her that they would not look at him the same and think of him as a man anymore. So that's, that's where his head was that they're not going to look at me anymore the way they do now. So he hid it for any reason, I'm sorry, in my mind would be wrong. That's something not that you don't want to hide. So yeah, he kept that a secret, and she swore it, and she never did tell it until years later, which then it's now when you look back at Michael Hutchence, and you now know all the torment that he was going through. The suicide by hanging, and the coroner's final report of it as suicide by hanging because of a combination of everything that was in his system, along with years of depression and the stressors of Bob Geldof, was the reason he died, as opposed to Paula's and what she wants to claim is the reason she thinks he died, which I'm not going to even say now. It's not, it's of no, there, it was definitely not of any, they of course looked into it, but there was no point in the indicators of anything beyond exactly what the coroner's final ruling was. So anything beyond that is hearsay, and I don't want to go there. There is a 25-year-old daughter that, not that she's going to watch my documentary, but there is his 25-year-old daughter is alive today and has to live with the legacy of whatever she is in her head feels happened. For me to put anything out there other than what's factual would be reckless. So I'm not going to do that. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. You're all lovely, fabulous. And I'm going to get working on, the next part, which takes us to the meeting between Michael and Paula. And where it goes from there is bewildering, as we'll all see. So I hope you'll all tune in for that second part. Like I said, that'll probably be in a few weeks. But please like this video if you did. Share it. Hopefully you'll subscribe to my channel and we can grow as a community. So until then, everyone be safe, be kind to each other, and we'll talk soon. Good night, all. Have a great day.